Yes, in this video I will be giving a Christian response to universal basic income or basic income equality, which seem to mean the same thing. Now, Maclean's, the magazine, makes this concept very easy for us to understand. Let's give them a listen.
Who wouldn't want free money? Well, that's the idea behind what's called Universal Basic Income, or UBI. It's something you may have heard politicians and business leaders talking about lately. The version most people think of when they hear the phrase Universal Basic Income is pretty simple. The government gives everyone a set amount of money every month, no strings attached. You get $12,000 and you get $12,000. Everybody gets $12,000.
Basic income equality and universal basic income have been advocated even by our premiers and our Canadian politicians. Here we have a church. Now, I'm not going to name the church, I'm just going to play the video of the guy saying it. But here we have a church advocating that we need to go to the government and ask them to implement this.
I encourage you to join with the church and with many others across the country to call on our government to roll out a guaranteed livable income program. Such a program would enable all people to live with dignity, regardless of work status. Contact Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland today. For decades, we as a church have been working towards this. Now is the time to make history.
My first initial reaction to the leader of that particular denomination is to ask him how important is it to him, this universal basic income equality. I just happened to look into one of the churches in my hometown and looked at their annual report and saw that that church actually had about $2 million in annuities. In my guesstimation, and it's just a guess, is that particular denomination, if you polled all the assets together, would be $1 billion, maybe even more. We don't even know. When you put real estate, annuities, and if people were to give towards this cause. My kind of thing that I would say, if a church really thinks that's important, they have a big enough network. Why don't they pool their money together as a church and find people who need this basic income and help them out financially? Why are you always begging the government to do things? We know that government does things absolutely, completely inefficient. But as well, I want to deal with what does the Bible actually say about this kind of idea of just basically giving everyone $1,000 free money, no strings attached. Now, when you look on the internet, there's pros, there's cons, but a lot of the cons are very alarming. One of them is people aren't stirred and aren't motivated to work. The other question that we have to come to the realization with in Canada is our country is virtually broke. We're around $1 trillion in debt, and this kind of project implemented in Canada would just drive us further down the road to debt. Well, what is the Christian response to this? I think when we look at the book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 14 and 2 Thessalonians 3 verse 6, we see a clear indication that we as believers, we as Christians, ought to be having a Christian work ethic. For instance, Paul says, and I urge you, brothers, admonish the idle. Those who are idle, those who are not working, they're to be admonished to be busy with their time. In 2 Corinthians 3 verse 6, he says, now we command you, brothers, in the name of the Lord Jesus, that you keep away from any brother who is walking in idleness and not accord with the tradition that you received from us. The Bible seems to be very much against idle hands and expecting even just free money from people. Even just think of the Proverbs. I preached a sermon in the summer called Laziness, Slothfulness, Slackers, and Sluggards in Proverbs. And what I was struck by the book of Proverbs is how negatively God, in his word, speaks out against sluggards and laziness. A sluggard is foolish. In Proverbs 15:19, the way of the sluggard is like a hedge of thorns, but the path of the upright is a level highway. Like Proverbs 10:26, like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. As well, we see that a sluggard is prideful. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. A sluggard sleeps too much. As a door turns on his hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed. A sluggard doesn't work hard. The desire of a sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. In Proverbs 24, verse 30 to 31, it says, I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense, and behold, it was overgrown with thorns. The ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. And finally, a sluggard will be in poverty. Proverbs 12, verse 11, whoever works his hand will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits lacks sense. Proverbs 13, verse 4, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. Now I know that there's going to be many objections. Proverbs is not saying don't take care of people. A big theme in Proverbs is actually giving to poor people. Remember the verse in Proverbs, he who gives to the poor lends to the Lord. But what Proverbs is getting at is those who are able, they're to work for themselves and make money. And we shouldn't be expecting the government to hand out money to everybody and thinking that that's going to solve all our problems. It actually probably going to create more. Anyways, thanks for watching and God bless.